starting now.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cezar Mesquita, Director of Admissions here at Western Washington University. Ordinarily, we'd like to be welcoming you in person to our beautiful campus here in Bellingham. What is a beautiful spring day here as we talk to you about what to expect for the fall experience and to be talking to you about the transitions and next steps in this process from admitted students to confirmed students and certainly to enrolled student in the fall term. These are not ordinary times, of course, so here we find ourselves dealing with aspects of the COVID-19 experience, the pandemic, and trying to develop new ways of doing our craft that we have been doing for 127 years. When I thought about the introductory remarks here today, my mind went to a couple of people who are very important in my life. One is my son, who was admitted to Western. He chose to go to a different institution, so thanks, Dad. He's not going to be coming to Western, but certainly keeping that perspective in mind of the high school senior going through that transition right now and looking very much to what the fall will be. And the other person is actually my boss's boss, so our Vice President for Enrollment and Student Services, Melinda Husky, whose son was also admitted to Western for the fall. And thinking about the parent perspective of a potential student who will be enrolling at Western. And no doubt the different expectations, the expectations are different and they overlap by quite a bit. So what we hope here today is to have an opportunity to address some of the questions that you all have, parents primarily, but we expect some students to also be in the audience here today, to have the colleagues, the group that we have here represented by a number of different offices and units across the university to inform you with the most updated information about what we can expect for the fall 2020 experience. So we are thrilled to have you here today. Again, we wish that we could be talking with you in person, but be that as it may, we certainly do hope to make the best of this experience here for the next 90 minutes to answer as many of the questions as possible, whether in person here or certainly during the chat. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert, our host, and we'll get things started. Thank you so much. Robert, please.
Great, thank you, Cezar. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our admitted student parent information session. Welcome to Western Washington University and welcome to my living room. My name is Robert Stolzberg. I'm an admissions counselor at Western. I work with prospective students all the way from the time they start thinking about college and looking at college for the first time up until they are admitted to Western and making plans to attend in the fall. I'm also a graduate of Western Washington University. I graduated in 2014, the double major in Spanish and linguistics, spent a couple of years in Spain teaching English at an elementary school, and now I'm back here at Western helping students find their way to college. My role here today on this panel is I'm just going to be taking questions and passing them off to our staff members who are joining us here today. We're going to be answering questions, of course, here live on the air, but we're also going to be answering questions in the chat and providing some links and further resources and information. So definitely keep an eye on that chat. That's also the place for you all to be asking us questions. And without further ado, I'm going to get to our panelists who are from a number of different areas of the university, joining us from their various homes and offices. And I'm going to let them all introduce themselves so you all know who we're speaking with today. So we're going to start with Leonard. Take it away, Leonard.
Hello, everyone out there. I'm Leonard Jones. I'm the Director of University Residences. I've been at Western for about 7 years now, and I've loved the experience so far. I'm in charge of the housing system, so lots of students start their careers off here at Western living in housing. I'm very delighted to be here today with you.
Great, thank you so much, Leonard, and thank you for being here. Next, we're going to hear from Ronna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ronna Biggs, and I'm the Director of the New Student Services and Family Outreach Office. And I am also a proud Western alum, class of 1993, going way back a little bit. But I'm happy to be here today, and our office works with new student and family orientation, as well as family outreach and communications. Thanks for being here.
Great, thank you, Ronna. And Ronna, I expect you're going to be quite popular today because you work in a lot of exciting stuff that's coming up for incoming students. Next, we are going to hear from Meagan.
Hi everyone, my name is Meagan Bryson. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Assistant Director in the Academic Advising Center at Western. Our office is a central advising location for undergraduate students at Western. We get to work with incoming students. That's one of the most significant parts of the work we do during your initial advising and registration experience for classes, which is always super exciting. And then we're an ongoing resource for students throughout their time at Western. I also am a proud Western alum, completed both my undergrad and graduate degrees at Western.
Great, thank you so much, Meagan. Thank you for being here. Next, we're going to hear from Sislena.
You missed my introduction. I was on mute. Hi, everybody. I am Sislena Ledbetter, and I'm the Executive Director of Counseling, Health, and Wellness. And what that means is I oversee the Counseling Center, the Student Health Center, and our Prevention and Wellness Services. And I've only been at Western for almost 11 months. And half of that time almost has been unprecedented time. So be kind to me as we navigate. But in all seriousness, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that you are here and sharing with us in this virtual environment. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Sislena. Thank you for being here both at this panel and here at Western as well. Next, we're going to hear from Vicki.
Hi everyone, my name is Vicki Vanderwerf. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Director in Residence Life, so I work with Leonard and University Residences. I've been at Western for 2 years now and excited to answer your questions about on-campus living.
Great, thank you so much, Vicki. And last but not least, we are going to hear from the winner of the Coolest Zoom Background Award, Casey.
Hi everyone, Casey Hayden here as Assistant Director of Student Activities. I work in the Viking Union. I've got a great job that I love because I get to work with so many amazing students in student leadership and student government, over 200 student employees. We do amazing things out of the Viking Union and the associated students, and I'm fortunate to be able to do that and work with them. And actually, I am as well a Western alum for graduate school. Came in here. There's my friendly cohort. I don't know which direction to point, but Meagan and I were in the same cohort for the Student Affairs program back and wrapped that up in 05. And so it's great to be here with you all and can't wait to take some questions.
Great, thank you, Casey. And Cezar, who you've already heard from, is also going to be joining us for the duration of this program. So as you all can hear, we have some experts from all over campus here to answer your questions. Before we do get to those questions though, I do want to acknowledge that what we're all living through and sharing right now in Bellingham and in the state of Washington and in the United States and all over the world is new and it's hard, and we're all figuring things out together, and that's why we're here today. We're here to help you all, to help you support your students and give them the tools that they need to be successful at Western. You know, right now during this pandemic and beyond. We're currently planning as a university for all contingencies, but we expect fall quarter to start as scheduled on September 25th with a hybrid option of in-person and online classes that I'm sure we're going to hear more about over the course of this session. First and foremost in our minds is the safety of students, staff, and faculty, and that's paramount to everything we are doing right now. So without further ado, we are going to get to our first question. We're going to hear from Cezar first. Cezar, what will this hybrid model look like? And is my student going to be choosing online versus in-person classes, or is that a decision for the professor?
Thank you, Robert. Indeed, the most asked question of what will the delivery of the classroom experience, will that look like, right? And I want to acknowledge a couple of things. I know that many families who are on the call here today are looking at the June 1 date as a confirmation priority date for you to decide whether Western is going to be the choice for your students. So for those families, do know that it is not a deadline. It is a priority confirmation date, the point after which we will start communicating with students about important next steps here into the summer months, such as the final decisions on housing assignments, for example, to communicate with students on reserving their spot in the fall advising and orientation session later on this summer. So for families who feel like they need additional time in order to make an informed decision, do know that June 1 is not the last date in which you can confirm your enrollment. So I just want to put that out there that as we're going to be hearing from our experts over here, there's a lot of work in progress. And much of that work in progress is very much having to do with the academic experience. What will the class delivery look like? And when you hear things like synchronous versus asynchronous, right? When you talk about a class that is recorded, asynchronous, it's not done in synchronicity, as opposed to a class that is synchronous, like this, a more live experience where you have an opportunity to interact. Those are things that are absolutely part of the planning process. In addition to things that take into consideration the social and physical distancing that many students would expect, particularly as it relates to some of the guidelines by public health officials. We need to incorporate those elements into the delivery of our classes here at Western, as with every college and university across the nation right now is experiencing and is working through. So the goal is to be student-centered, and in that, the priority will be the first-year students. And in that first-year experience, we're going to have available options for in-class, in-person, what we call face-to-face, as well as online or remote learning. So you're going to be hearing from a lot of different folks here today who are going to be talking about what that's going to look like for experiences outside the classroom, in the residence hall, and what are the things we're going to be doing. Our faculty, no doubt, they are also considering things with regard to their own personal care and safety. They may be individuals who have aspects of their identity, of their health background that are of concern, right? So there has to be a layer of protection there for themselves in this new space. So they are looking at also offering options for themselves and their students that take into account what is the best model for this kind of class to be delivered remotely versus face-to-face. So for students who are going to be first-year students, you can expect many of the courses to be delivered remotely because of some of the limitations having to do with the space, because of some of the limitations having to do with the time of day in which the classes are going to be offered. But we will absolutely be offering many face-to-face classes, particularly seminar classes in our first-year interest groups, to name some of the examples. First-year interest groups, lab sections, as well as classes for some of our honors students are going to be offered face-to-face. Then faculty members are going to be working with some students with regard to which classes need to be perhaps offered, depending on what students' needs may be with regard to requirement for graduations. Perhaps not so applicable to first-year students, but perhaps students later on in their later years. Our faculty are taking that into account. I use these as examples to let you know that our instructors, friends in the registrar's office, they have to put all of this into the registration experience, as well as some of our student representatives in talking about what are some of the best options so that we can deliver an experience on campus that you can expect to be accessible as well as safe for everybody involved. So with that said, so one of the questions that come up, which usually a follow-up, is if I'm a student who's concerned about my safety, will I be able to have a class schedule that is predominantly or exclusively remotely? And the answer is yes. You will have the opportunity to build a schedule that will be almost exclusively done remotely as we continue to work through the best practices in the public health sphere to incorporate things like physical distancing and personal protective equipment, as well as the safety and well-being of everybody involved in that regard. This is where a moment in which I've already queued up some of my colleagues to say, hey, if others want to chime in and add a few other notes about what this is going to look like in the classroom, they're ready to be adding a few more bits. So with that, I turn it over to some of my colleagues who wish to add a few notes.
Cesar, thank you. I'll add a couple of notes. One is that classes that are specifically lab focused, where it's really critical that the lab experience take place, those classes, we are right now planning for those to be in person with the time distancing and shielding. So we'll be making sure that the distancing is in place. So we're actually looking at structures of labs right now and how those can be most efficiently laid out. And then also, how might we consider staggering timeframes for students who will be taking those lab courses? But there are some courses that will be best suited for in-person. And for those, we are ensuring that our safety procedures are consistent with the recommendations for the CDC, and that we ascribe appropriate distancing and for your students. So I just wanted to certainly add that, but not just for labs, but for all classes. And, you know, at the risk of sounding redundant, and Cezar has covered this, that we, regardless of which classes your student has, whether they are lab classes or whether they are classes that are not lab classes, if they are on campus, we are looking right now at models that ensure that the spaces are appropriately distanced, including, you know, marking off every, 6 feet for the chairs in the classrooms, taking chairs out to ensure that students aren't sitting close, and the like. So there will be appropriate measures taken so that your students will, safety will be first.
Great, thank you, Sislena, and thank you, Cezar, for those very informative answers to what is certainly a complicated and multifaceted question. Sislena, we're gonna stick with you for the next question. The question is, what will COVID-19 testing look like at Western this fall?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We are looking at a variety of models for testing. Initially, we were thinking that when students arrived in late August, that we were going to do testing of all students and then recommend testing every couple of weeks. That is gonna shift depending on the guidance that we're getting from the CDC and from leadership in the country. Part of the reason is that we have to make sure that when we test students, that we have appropriate contact tracing in place to address what happens after we determine that there's a positive, that we have appropriate case management in place. And so the testing is one part of a broader strategy that we're looking at. It's only one piece of it. And so we're working on that now. I will tell you that we've got a partnership with Northwest Labs, which is a local lab, and it's also a designated federal lab that has the capacity to test, to process up to 4,000 tests a day. So the capacity to do the testing is there. What we're working with now and navigating is, how are we gonna do this testing with students? Will these be self-administered tests where we essentially have students come pick up tests, go back to their rooms, administer the test, drop the test off? So we're looking at the safest way to administer the test, the most efficient way to administer the test to decrease risk for everyone. And then how are we gonna employ contact tracing and surveillance once we do the testing? Because as you know, literally, an hour after someone is tested and they test negative, they can test positive because, of that, depending on how they, whether they go out or not. And so we're just really trying to figure this out. And I've been having conversations with colleagues from across the country addressing this very issue. And I'll have you know, we're all grappling with the same concerns about how can we keep our students safe and which testing measures and surveillance systems will we employ. But I'll tell you that whatever we decide is going to be evidence informed and evidence guided. that we will make sure that we employ the safest and most effective testing strategy for Western students.
Great, thank you, Sislena. And our next question is it's a housing question for Vicki and Leonard. I'll let the two of you take this one together. Question is it true that all rooms will be single occupancy in the fall? And more broadly, how's that gonna work?
Yes, I can take, that question, and if I forget anything significant, Vicki can add, but yes, it's really also hand in glove with the overall concern with safety that Dr. Ledbetter and Cezar have talked about. And from the guidelines that we are following from the ACHA, that's the American College Health Association, a guideline that they recommend for campus housing programs, starting out without a vaccine, without a cure, is to provide each student that they house on campus their own room. So yes, that question is directly related to that. How is that going to work out? As others have said, this is the first time we've done this. But part of what we will do is assess, and pretty soon your student should receive a survey from housing, and I would implore that they please complete the survey, check their Western email. That's how we're going to do this. We're not going to do it through Twitter or Reddit or any other kind of social media vehicle. And as individuals decide, as families decide, what's the best option for themselves, we'll kind of keep a running list of individuals interested in housing, but providing everyone their own room, not at a different charge, it's the same charge. So whether there's one in the room or more, it's the same charge, because we really feel like it is safety that should be dictating what we design more than anything else.
Great, thank you, Leonard. And Leonard, you bring up a really good point that is important to keep in mind, even beyond housing. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today, the answer to some of your questions might be there'll be more information available later. So one thing that you all as parents can encourage your students to do to help them be successful, both right now and as a good habit to get into to prepare them for college, is encourage them to keep up on their Western email accounts, whatever it is that their daily internet routine is, whatever social media or news sites that they're on. I'm getting some thumbs up from the panelists, which is great. I would really encourage you all to put in your students' heads that it's a really good idea to add checking their Western email to their daily internet routine, starting now and for the next 4 years, because that's where a lot of that information is going to be coming down. And I run into a lot of students who haven't quite gotten into that habit yet. So important for housing, of course, and for much of the other stuff that we're going to be talking about as well. Another Vicki and Leonard housing question. This question is, my student found a roommate already. Is there any chance that roommates can live next door to each other and still have that experience, even if they're not physically in the same room?
I'll let Vicki take that one.
Yes, that is possible. So we know that first year experience especially is so important to meet new people, or some folks even come in knowing friends from high school or others that they want to room with. So now that that's not an option, we do our best to try to place people as close together as possible. So for the spring quarter here, we still have residents who are living on campus. They are living one person to a room. And we really tried to, when we had people move across campus, locate them as closely as possible to that community group and that friend group. So we can't guarantee anything, of course, but we can try to place people as close together as possible so they still get that community experience, and know people within their same hallway or at least their same building is a little bit easier as well. So they'll be able to move around and get to know new folks as well as people that they've already know coming into Western.
Great, thank you, Vicki. Our next question is for Ronna. Ronna, what do we know about online orientation, and when will we find out when orientation is?
That is a fabulous question. We're getting really excited, and I'm checking with my colleague Meagan Bryson too, because we're in great partnership for those advising and orientation programs. We're in the process of finalizing session dates for those programs, because of course, just as everyone has shared, those two have gotten a little up into the mix to need to be resettled. So we're finalizing those dates, and we're hoping probably within the next week or so to really have the concrete decision about when those session dates will be. What we'll do is we'll be able to start advertising when those dates are, so folks kind of get a feel. Previously, we typically have done some things late July and then through August in particular for first year students, and we know we're going to be hitting about the same ballpark of time frame. So some things that will still be the same is that the students will have a very specific session that they're signing up for their advising and registration program and process, and they'll still work with great advisors and set up a great balanced class schedule. And so students will go online and they'll sign up for one of those session dates just like they would at any other year. Our events that we're doing, though, much as the similar theme that people have talked about, the orientation presentations as well as the advising sessions are all going to be completed virtually. And so I would defer to Meagan to talk a little bit more about the advising sessions, but I can say for the orientation events, I've already been in touch with a lot of colleagues on campus who are really excited. And the theme that we're talking about is how are we going to redefine connecting with new students and with parents and family members, because both of those constituent groups are near and dear to our office. And we want to make sure that the content that would have been delivered in an in-person session, that we find ways of sharing those offerings and presenting that information in a way that is still very accessible to students and to parents and family members. I think a bonus actually of being virtual is that it offers more accessibility to that information for both students and family members as early as possible, where we've had sometimes students have not been able to come to campus straight away for an orientation or advising session. And this way, a lot of that information will be able to be offered in a much more timely manner and be accessible. So similar to what some things have been offered with admissions, we're anticipating doing some live events similar to this, as well as having some pre-recorded informational pieces where students or family members can go back to those recordings, take a listen at your own time and your own pace, and still help make connections. And I know I, for one, my staff loves to have some fun. So we are very interested in having students connect with other students and do some fun ways of connecting and be creative about that in a virtual environment. So a good balance of information and a good balance of social connection too.
Great, thank you, Ronna.
Can I jump in here, Robert?
Yes, absolutely.
Is now the time? Great. Ronna, that was great. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to give a little bit more context around the advising experience. So as Ronna said, we're planning for a virtual program. We will still meet the same advising and registration learning outcomes, though, that we would have if we were in an in-person experience. So we want to provide you with an advising experience, help you plan your schedule, and then get you registered into some fall quarter classes. Our planning will be a hybrid model. So you will be receiving information in advance. Actually, for students who've confirmed Western, June 1st, we are excited to release our virtual advisor Canvas course. So it's the first opportunity for some pre-advising that goes over all sorts of important information. That's a lot. And so that's why we want to give you access early. So graduation requirements, general university requirements, information about major selection. If you know your major, if you don't know your major, what are the resources and next steps for you? So all sorts of important information that's going to help you get started. And then more in a synchronous model, we'll have the actual orientation date, whether that's transitions for our transfer students or fall advising and orientation for first year students, which is including both freshmen and running start. So again, confirmed students, watch your Canvas courses. An announcement will go out midweek about that, but you should be able to access it on Monday, June 1st. We're really excited about it.
Great, thank you, Megan. And before you mute your microphone, you can go ahead and leave that on because the next question is for you as well. And I think it goes off nicely from what we were just talking about with advising and orientation. The question is, my student doesn't know what they want to major in yet. What types of classes should they start with?
That's a great question. You know, I think being undecided is sometimes a great place to be because there are so many learning opportunities for students. We hear students all the time say, I had no idea I could major in that, or I could double major, or I could throw in a couple of minors. You can get really creative. And there are subject areas that students didn't even know existed, hundreds and hundreds of classes to choose from. So I would encourage students to stay away from the traditional classes you might think of and step outside the comfort zone and take something that might pique interest. I have a couple of ideas. One, I want to put in a plug for our FIGS program, which is our first year interest groups. I know that Vice President's of Undergraduate Education Office is working really hard to put together some information on their website. And I know a postcard is going to be going out in the mail soon to families and households. But FIGS are an opportunity for students to take what are considered general university requirements. So courses that are typically courses that students take in their first and second year. And it's paired along with a seminar course, which is a two credit seminar 101 class that you're in there with 24 about other students. You're all taking that same class together, plus those other general university class requirements. So that cluster of classes is a really nice thing to register for. You can actually pre-register for that as well. So before you even come to our virtual orientation, you can get pre-registered in a FIG. And it's a great way to explore. And you're also building community. So you immediately have 24 other friends with you in that cluster of classes. FIGs are designed for incoming freshmen who are coming in with less than 45 credits. But we find that many students are still working through GURs, so general university requirements, or those classes that really span the breadth of the university and really are a great way to explore majors. Other resources around choosing and declaring a major can be found on our Academic Advising Center website, which I saw was posted earlier in the chat. Thank you very much. The Career Services Center also has some awesome resources around where do I go if I'm a graduate. So I know when I came to Western, I found the graduate employment survey really helpful. I had a major in mind, but I wanted to see what kind of employers might be able to hire me. And so figuring out where do graduates go, what kind of internships can they get, all sorts of different resources that will help you in that discovery process of figuring out your major.
Great, thank you, Megan. Our next question is for Cezar. The question is, my student has been offered a scholarship, but may want to defer enrollment. Will they still get the scholarship next quarter or next year when they come to Western?
Generally, yes, and I say that with a little bit of hesitation, only to make the distinction of if they don't enroll in college elsewhere, right? So if a student, let's talk about the classic scenario. You defer your enrollment till next year, your scholarship will not be affected for the following year. If a student chooses to then enroll in another institution to get some credits or to start on their educational experience and not feel like they're losing any time, the student will have to effectively reapply as a transfer student to Western, and the scholarships for transfer students are very different than those for first years. So traditionally speaking, in this construct here of talking about a traditional gap year or a deferral process, the scholarships will not be affected if they wait to re-enroll in the subsequent year.
Great, thank you, Cezar. Our next question is for Casey. Casey, what do you expect clubs and activities to look like in the fall?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I've seen some of that pop up in the chat, so I'm very happy to get into that. Clubs and activities are going to happen. They're going to happen, and students are going to be here. And one of the mantras that we're definitely talking about already is hybrid delivery, right? Both in the course delivery, but also in co-curricular and activities world. So because we don't want any students being left out or left behind. So there will be in-person students here, and they will create things to do, and there will be structures for them to do them in. So we have over 200 250 or around 250 clubs that are active on campus, and they're going to remain active. And we're going to help them find ways to bring in students who have chosen to remain online, so that that community, all of those multiple communities can still be created, and that everyone feels that they have access to them, and in some ways maybe even greater access than we've had in the past. So I'm really excited about that. There's going to be a lot that's still going to be happening. I've seen a couple of times this exact question pop up, that, you know, what's that college experience that my students can they still get it, and why should they actually come? And I think there's so many things that will be there. We'll have student government opportunities. There'll be committees and councils that are very important. Oftentimes it's not the flashy thing, but it's really the thing that can be the rubber meeting the road, where students get involved in university governance. And we will have Senate elections in the fall, and so students will be able to do that, incoming first years. And so really encourage, we did our elections online in spring, and we're ready to do a hybrid model in fall. There'll be outdoor recreation. You know, we've all been outside a lot lately, and it's one of our few things we can do. And we've got so many ample opportunities for that here. Our outdoor center is already making plans for how they're going to adjust things and keep sizes safe. So the sizes of groups will be a big factor in club activities and meeting rooms and facilities. We'll definitely be doing all of that. And I saw a question about WOOT. I can answer that question too. The Western Outdoor Orientation trips, which have been amazing opportunities. Because of the overnight component of those, we're not going to be proceeding with WOOT in summer and fall, but we will be utilizing a lot of the same structure and the benefit of making social connections that happens in those trips, because we will have our student leaders, our peer trip leaders that would normally lead those trips, will be formulating ways to connect with students and get them in small groups, and start that even in summer as a part of the virtual orientation. We'll be making that opportunity available. And then once people, if they choose to be here, and we will then have a face-to-face component of that. They will be more like day trips in the fall, but not overnight. But there's going to be that continuation from summer into fall, which is going to give so many students a great opportunity to find community even before they land here. And so that's really exciting. There's going to be so many opportunities. Volunteerism, there'll be ways to get involved, and leadership, civic engagement. It's an election year, so there's always lots of activity on an election year. It's a great time to be on a college campus, and so I'm excited about that as well. And you know, from a facilities angle, you know, this is Red Square. We have so many great facilities that we can't wait to get back into, and we know we will be able to get back into. We'll be following all the guidance from the health department and the CDC on that, and there's plans in the works already for how we're going to do traffic flow and you know, plexiglass barriers in all the retail areas and all these other things that we're going to need to do, but they're going to be there for everyone's safety, and gorgeous spaces like the new Multicultural Center in the VU. We can't wait to get back in there. We know students are hungry for that community, and it's going to happen. We will just have to watch our spaces and make space. And so, yeah. But if there's any follow-ups that have popped up in the chat, I'm happy to take them.
Robert, I'd like to, you know, add the piece about community, particularly with respect to the residence halls, and Vicki may have something to add on this as well. You know, campus, because I saw something in the chat about building community and what community is like living on campus as opposed to just being at home with siblings. And here at Western, we like to think of our residence hall system as really supporting the full educational and social and academic development of students. You know, I say quite often, we are more than the Holiday Inn. You know, it's easy to kind of just hand out the keys, go up to the floor, call us at this number if you want anything, and be done. But that's not the kind of community that you want for your student, nor we believe would be successful for the student. So lots of interaction, socially distanced, appropriate, all of those things. but lots of interactions inside the residential community that Vicki and her staff do a fabulous job connecting students so that they learn how to learn from others that are different. You know, not everyone will come from the same high school. Risk, challenge a little bit. Days have long gone. I remind students of dad. I don't remind, days of me passing as a student is long behind me. But it is the training of staff that Vicki oversees to help make those connections to something broader for themselves, and helping students remember that when they are here striving, they have you, they have grandma, they have siblings looking up to them. They are here to be successful, not only for themselves, but for their families as well. That's the other piece, the non-Holiday Inn piece that housing attempts to bring to Western. Vicki, anything more on that you'd like to add?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is I really wanted to also echo Casey's comments about we're bringing students back to campus. So we're going to have face-to-face interactions. It's just going to look a little different. So we know that especially on-campus housing, a huge purpose it serves. We know students are nervous when their number one concern usually coming in is, am I going to meet people? Am I going to make friends? Am I going to feel connected to the institution? So that's a huge benefit that students get, especially from living on campus. And they will still be able to do that. They're going to meet people on their floor. We have resident advisors on almost every floor in our buildings for that peer-to-peer interaction. We really encourage students to get out of their rooms. They're intentionally small in some ways to encourage them to use public spaces, interact with each other. It's just going to look a little different in smaller groups. And in a socially distant way, and more safety procedures with bathrooms and cleaning and preventative measures that we're taking. But those interactions are still possible and will still be fostered through our programming, through our events, and through all the interactions that students have just on campus with the resources available to them, the people that they'll meet, the student staff and professional staff that we have living in the building. So just wanted to echo those comments in terms of it is possible to have a great experience living on campus and just being on campus at Western with those activities and involvement opportunities that are available.
Could I chime in with one more thing about that, which would be that to keep your eye out for employment opportunities as well. There's still going to be a lot of student employment opportunities that will be posted in the summertime. It's sort of in some ways a silver lining to all of this is that normally we'd have most of our associated students hiring done in spring, but now we've had to push back a lot of it. And so that actually opens up even easier access to our first year students to apply for those positions. So keep your eyes out for those. There's positions in all of these many student programs. If you check out the Associated Students website, you'll see the many programs that are there. Also, as we talk about creating community, I can't emphasize enough our Ethnic Student Center that is within the Multicultural Center is a great place that has been doing amazing work even during this time to connect with students and creating space for taking care of one another and connections with the Counseling Center and connections with each other. The communities that are on campus, the micro and the macro, are going to continue and they're thriving, and students will thrive in this environment, because I think that our students are so hungry for peer interaction, and we see that. We see that at home and around them. And so I know they're going to make things happen, and I'm excited to see it restart.
I missed you guys. The magic of live broadcasting, my computer threw me off of the Zoom call very briefly, but I'm back, and I hope you all can hear me. You didn't miss me. We have a question for Sislena. What is the best way to encourage new students to wear their masks properly on campus? And if this question was not audio terrible. Okay.
It's better now. It just got better. Keep talking.
Audio better. Fantastic. Well, before the audio goes away, Sislena, how do we encourage students to wear their masks and wear them properly?
There I go again. We are putting out information early and often about students and the wearing of masks. Right now, we are thinking broadly about the campus community. So it is important that we think about not only making sure that students wear masks when they are in spaces where they cannot appropriately social distance, and when they're on campus and in class when it's important that they shield. So if they're sitting in a classroom space. We've been communicating about that, and we are currently working on a non-N95 face covering for all of our students. We just received an update from our governor. Governor Inslee did a town hall recently, I think within the past 24 hours, that said that we must provide non-N95 masks to all employees that must work on campus, which is also for the benefit of the students, of your students. But also we're going to encourage strongly, I think the language that the governor uses is strongly urge all students to wear masks on campus, especially when they consider time, distance, and shielding. So they will get further guidance as information comes out about exactly how to, with pictures included, about exactly how to use and wear their masks appropriately. Our director of environmental health and safety says that one of the things she's noticed is that students are protecting their foreheads and chins, and that it is important that we put out pictures and guidance on how students should appropriately don masks. And so we'll be issuing that guidance.
Great, thank you, Sislena. We have another housing question up next. So this one is for Leonard and Vicki. Will there be enough rooms for all the students if they are all going to be one to a room?
Depending on, that's an excellent question. Depending on kind of the responses to our survey that students will receive in their Western email, so they need to check that. That's something that we're planning and stepping through. So I can't answer any more definitively because I don't know what the future will produce there. There will be some families and some students that are concerned about, you know, whether they have compromised systems themselves or afraid of, you know, passing that on going home. So we will respect those decisions. But that's why that survey that will be coming out very shortly will be an important piece. Also related to safety, I want to follow up on a point Dr. Ledbetter made, and that is once that guidance come out from the university, Vicki, overseeing our RA staff, will make sure that we emphasize that guideline within the residential setting as well. So staff will have to be retrained in order to constantly remind students. I know this doesn't happen at home at all. I know you don't have to remind them about anything, but just in the eventuality that once they get here and they need that reminding, there's someone that's living on their floor, making sure that they are properly adhering to the public health guidelines that the university and others have established.
I just want to follow up also, Leonard, on a point that you made and sort of reflect a sensitivity to some of the comments that I'm seeing around masks being required. One of the things we have been very careful about is recognizing that when you require a, when you create a guideline or a standard or a requirement, you've got to come up with repercussions. And so we want to strongly urge and hope that the community polices itself, because once we require students to wear masks, then we have to think about what the repercussions are once they decide not to wear masks. And those can be graduated kinds of repercussions that could land them in with our dean, right? And so while we want to require them, I've had conversations with our legal counsel about what is the difference between a guideline, the policy, and a standard that falls underneath a policy. And to what extent can we then create, these sanctions, and what will they be? And so I just want you to know that we are thinking about that, and required, we want to, if it were me, and I have a student who's graduating as well this year and going off to university, and I want the masks to be required, but I also don't want to criminalize the non-wearing of masks. And so there's got to be something in between. And so we're thinking about that. We're thinking about your students, and what's most important is their safety. And so we're hoping that some of the self-policing will happen, that it will be an accessory, just the way these really cool glasses are an accessory, that when students get up in the morning, they'll don their mask, they'll don their shades or their glasses, their scarf, or whatever they put on, but it will then become a regular part of the routine, and they will self-regulate because they will see everyone else is doing it. And I think that, Leonard, we still mistake you for a student. So for those of us who occasionally get mistaken for students, when they sit around each other, I think I'm feeling fairly confident that there will be, when you think organizationally, there will be a process by which they will then hold each other accountable for making sure that they follow the rules and recommendations and standards.
And Robert, just something to really quickly add to what Dr. Ledbetter said. We know this is confusing, nationally, because every other day you hear about a school, usually back east, and they're opening all their residence halls and everybody's moving in, and what's the difference? And I used to, prior to Western, work in those states, in those environments. So I get there's confusion because we have no one national standard. But that's why at Western, I started off my comments mentioning that the American College Health Association guidelines is what's going to guide us, not what they're doing in South Carolina. And I got friends in South Carolina, so nothing against South Carolina, nothing against Indiana, but we have chosen this particular path. And that's why, how come the kids can't just live together and they're best friends and those kinds of things? That's why, we're really trying to be overly, maybe sometimes more conservative sometimes than we need to be, but we're setting that as our North Star that we follow in part.
Thank you both for your insight and your answers about the whole mask discussion and safety on campus as a whole. Thank you for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. We have a question for Ronna next. What is the best way for parents to keep up with campus news?
Robert, you cut out just a little bit at the end, and I missed something.
What is the best way to keep up with campus news? I apologize for my audio quality.
Thank you. I think one of the best ways to keep up with campus news, there's actually a couple of different ways. One, of course, the Western main page website has a lot of information that if you're looking for updates related to campus operations in the midst of COVID-19 and looking for some particular guides that are coming out. So for example, there was a spring guide that was published there, so anyone could access that and be able to understand different components and FAQs of what was happening for spring. So there's some additional information that's we're trying very hard to make that very accessible and very obvious. So actually the main website is a great place to start. ongoing throughout the year, there's a couple of other elements that our office really encourages parents and family members to get connected to. And our office, in conjunction with University Communications, co-produces a monthly e-newsletter that's called the WW Family Connection Newsletter. And it's really chock full of a lot of information, including things like events that might be upcoming, great stories about what's going on with student life and campus life, highlighting faculty and staff that are doing great work or research, talking about just good feel-good stories. And also it's been a key communication piece in relation to the current circumstance with COVID-19 and campus operations. So that newsletter is something that folks can sign up for through the New Student Services Family Outreach website. Between admissions in our office and the folks in University Communications, we also curate those requests for folks to get connected to that newsletter. And I think right now there's probably a distribution, because it's not just for new parents and family that are in connection to new students, but it's for an ongoing receipt of that. So we have, I think, a mailing list of somewhere close to around 18,000 parents and family members that distribution goes out to. So it's quite a wide resource. You can also sign up for things like Western Alerts and to receive Western Today, which is a near daily communication that also highlights things that are going on campus and the most up-to-date campus events. Those kinds of things are also produced by University Communications Office. So that information is wonderful to get. So if you really want to get some of the juicier, more in-depth communications pieces, there are some things that will come to you or things that you could seek out. Western also has a great batch of social media outlets. So if you're into looking at social media and Facebook or Instagram, also just some different ways to get connected through University Communications as well. And if folks have any difficulty seeking those things out or finding them, you can always contact the New Student Services and Family Outreach Office, and we'll help point you in the direction as to where those resources are, or to help you get signed up for that. Lots of great resources.
Great, thank you, Ronna. Next question is for Cezar. Cezar, can my student choose to take all their classes online if they want to?
It is every expectation that for students who, for a number of reasons, oftentimes we associate these kinds of choices with personal safety and wellness and well-being, that yes, students who will be seeking a primarily remote modality of instruction of learning, taking larger classes online, to put it simply, they will have the opportunity to do that. Yes.
Great, thank you, Cezar. And you can go ahead and keep your microphone on, because next question is another one for you. Has Western trained professors to instruct online? How is Western helping them be effective remotely? And how is Western assessing the quality of these online classes?
Well, I will definitely be inviting some of my colleagues to help shore up some of the answers over here, because I am not a faculty member. I do not work in that environment, but what I've heard is the following, right? Let's also put a little bit more context into this answer over here. Faculty members love to teach. They are engaged with their craft from a very early years in their profession. They love to speak to the area of their expertise. They go on to get their PhDs to contribute to the body of knowledge within that subject area or in that particular area of expertise. So they, by that very definition, they love to deliver the information and impart of this knowledge in the community, and to bring in students to help understand and challenge and learn with one another. The delivery of remote learning is a craft that has been with us for 20 plus years now. And some professors in some areas of teaching have adopted that very early on. Others not so much. Others it's almost impossible to do in a remote environment. And think of things like physical education or music or laboratory experiences. Just to name a few, movement science, stage movement, right? Just to name a few. So it is going to be perhaps easier in some areas to deliver remote experience than in others. I do know that faculty members are absolutely honing that craft, transferring what they can from the traditional physical space into the remote learning environment to the best of their ability. There are new technologies that some are utilizing for the first time. There are different kinds of engagement with the students that is brand new to both the faculty member, the instructor, and the students. So I do know that they are engaging in some of those trainings. And as far as the last piece of that question, which was the accountability, when you talk about the ultimate piece, right? Was it a quality and engaging experience? I would like to think that the faculty members are using things like course evaluations to determine whether that modality worked for the student. And when it didn't, perhaps look at opportunities to refine that or change the approach for the next time that they deliver it. And if they're doing things that are working and are particularly great, they should probably try it again. So those are some of the impressions that I have, and I invite some of my other colleagues who might be closer to that action to chime in, please.
I think you did a brilliant job, Cezar, not to be formally connected to the academic side. But yeah, I think I just want to echo what you've said, and also let all of the parents know that faculty have been trained. Our IT or ATUS, our technology folks have rolled out extensive training for all faculty who are now swiftly, they made that swift transition to remote work. And so there were growing pains, but they are, committed to serving students and are fully engaged in the teaching and learning environment. And also want to remind you that online classes are new to Western in many cases in terms of broadly, but they're not new. And so there are many ways to evaluate coursework online that have existed for a very long time. And so what we're doing is ensuring that the faculty members have the tools that they need to provide the course evaluations in order to determine whether or not the remote working environment is going well for their class. And so they're going to be, adapting and strategizing and sort of embracing this change, just like all of us, and kind of adjusting as they need to.
Add 2 quick points to that as well. Just that we've done this spring quarter, and we've actually gotten out a survey to all currently enrolled students and asking about their experience in online learning. And so I know that the faculty side is really absorbing that data and taking that to heart, and we'll make adaptations. Like Sislena says, a learning curve, and I think we're going to see a lot of improvement. And then also the other quick point, there was a thing in the chat about accountability and consistency there. And I know that the Faculty Senate is the governance body for faculty, where they're looking at that. And then also the Student Senate, there's student representatives on that group. And I can imagine that there will continue to be conversations where students are being heard, and hopefully we'll be in a great place where there'll be town halls and open forums, and we'll keep evolving towards much improved methods.
Great, thank you, everyone. Next question is for Sislena. The question is, I am worried that my student will have a hard time being away from home emotionally, more so because of the pandemic. Who can they talk to?
That's a great question. And the counseling center is staffed with licensed counselors, licensed psychologists, licensed social worker. We also have an incredible behavioral health team staffed with psychiatrists over in our student health center that sort of rounds out our integrated model. We have nurse practitioners with specialties in behavioral medicine. And so there will be ample support for your student when they arrive on campus to take courses. Most of the challenges with coming to campus have to do with adjusting, right? When a student leaves home, they're homesick, or they're not quite adjusting the way they would like to. And what I tell students all the time is, you're really not in this together. Everyone else, all of the other freshmen are bumping into each other and trying to figure out, is this my group or is that my group? And so I encourage students to quickly find a counselor in the counseling center and not worry about the stigma of being unhinged or being labeled, but just reach out and get the support that you need to kind of move and advance and feel supported. They're there for that. But there are also groups, and this is an amazing age for developmental groups. So we have group yoga, and we have Wellness Wednesdays, and we have, queer yoga. We have all kinds of outreach that we do. And a lot of it is in relationship with our student activities. So, our job is to catch them, because when you're gonna send them to us, our job is to catch them and mold them and support them. And help them get engaged, because what we know that the data says that students that are engaged, that get engaged, matriculate and they do better. And so we want to support them if they have those bumps in the road, but we also want to encourage them to remain engaged with their cohort and with students on campus. And so the Counseling Center is available. You can find them online. They also are working with our prevention and wellness services. So we're tweeting and Instagramming, and we are developing this new software tool that we're going to be rolling out that helps students talk and think about things like sleep and eating habits and all of those ancillary things that help students stay healthy while they're away from home, because we want them to eat well and we want them to sleep well and we want them to go to class and all of those things that they're trying to negotiate and navigate in this new environment. So a long way to say, Counseling Center is there for them, the Student Health Center is there for them, and Prevention and Wellness Services is there. And we're just eager to meet them.
Hey, Robert. Hey, Robert, if this might be a time, because I noticed in the chat a couple of questions related to dining and move-in. I might ask Vicki to address the move-in plans and things that we have, but the other hat that I wear, and I apologize, I did not communicate this, is I'm the one that oversees the contract with Aramark, our on-campus dining vendor, and there are some things that they are doing as well, and I'll make sure in subsequent conversations to represent this. But again, in the spirit of safety and how they will do their business differently, there's a number of options that they're considering to bring to campus in our particular situation. One, all dining employees will wear masks the entire time. So that's a requirement that they have. I also think that they're looking at, Sislena may be more familiar with this, the checking of signs, the checking of temperatures and those kinds of things. To get some nifty gun that you point to somebody's head that tells you the temperature. I'm scared by it, but that's what I understand they have. Low density, because the whole question in terms of college housing and dining is about density. And we are trying ways of reducing that density. So some things that we have not had on our campus in the past and can maybe expect to see is they are investigating mobile ordering. So that way students don't have to, the old days kind of come down, stand in line, go through the line and that sort of thing. All buffet style options are taken away, so students can pick how many pieces of chicken or a salad or whatever, and that is served to them versus them accessing it themselves. And I mentioned the other pieces. Probably the last piece I'll mention around dining, and again, we're safety, safety, safety should be guiding what we're doing, and that should be based in data and CDC guidelines. So dining is making sure that they are compliant with the governor's phased approach in opening the government and those kinds of things. So we will have more and communicate more, certainly when Ronna puts together the virtual package of presentations, but those are probably important things because students are going to spend a lot of time eating on the campus, and it's not all just pizza and hot dogs. There are some other things that as parents you would be concerned about. But the move-in piece got a lot of questions about, you know, how's that going to happen, you know, and it's a challenge every year for us to successfully navigate. So Vicki, you want to speak to that?
Sure. So move-in this year is being planned now, and it's really a year-long process for planning, but we're changing some of our practices, of course, with COVID-19. So the biggest ones I would say are move-in will be extended. So usually we move in about 4,100 students or so in 3 days. So we're extending that timeline. So it'll look more like 5 days or 6 days. We're still working out that schedule. We'll also be offering different services. So we're looking into things now about how you can bring your belongings early, drop off your belongings early, ship them to campus. So then there's less of that move in and out all of your belongings in such a quick time frame. We're also talking about how we sanitize moving carts and have systems for that, how we space people out more so there's less people moving into a building at one time. So lots of different opportunities there for us to do things a little differently. We're thinking about a virtual check-in, so you're staying in your car more until you get to the actual residence hall, so you can drop off your things and move in at that time. So a lot of safety precautions there, but still wanting to provide that welcoming experience for students and getting them connected right away to their RA, other students on the floor, and getting them connected to Western. So more information will be coming out this summer about move-in.
Great, thank you. And a couple of quick details to add. The June 1st deadline to confirm your enrollment at Western is not going to be a firm deadline. We understand that everything that's going on right now is affecting each student and each family in a little bit different of a way. So if your family or your student is in a situation where confirming that enrollment a little bit later is what you need to be successful and make the right choice with your student, definitely reach out and let us know, and we're able to work with that and be a little flexible. Also, quick note as well, there's been a lot of questions in the chat saying, will we be able to see these questions from the chat, specifically the written questions, as well as the links to the resources. We are going to have this chat log available that we can send to you via email. So everything that's been written in the chat, all of the links to the resources that have been posted, we will be able to send out to you as well. And of course, we will continue answering your questions down there. But back to the questions for us in the video. It's another housing question for Vicki and Leonard. Will students be able to visit other students' rooms in residence halls, and will non-students be allowed to visit rooms?
Go ahead, Vicki.
Yes, students will be allowed to visit other student rooms in the halls. That's really how they get to know each other, how they build community that a lot of the panelists have been talking about, especially within their residence hall. So there will still be events, programs, activities for them, and they're allowed to visit each other in their own spaces. We do give them their own room just to make sure they have space, and if they need that space, but they are allowed to be in each other's spaces. We are looking at our guest policy. So when students have guests from off campus or other residence halls, so not decided yet, but looking into precautions around that or expectations for students that will communicate, really looking at, again, the safety, health and safety of students and what that means for us when we have, especially off-campus guests coming in, friends from high school or parents, families, and others. So looking into those processes now. If we do that, There is a residence director in every community, master's level professional. They live on campus. So they're a good resource for questions as well. And if a student has a specific situation or wants to invite a guest over or has questions about that and how to do that in a healthy and safe way, then that's a great resource for them to reach out to talk to their resident advisor as well, who's a peer student leader, just get more information about what that could look like. But those expectations, policies, and procedures will be coming out soon, probably over the summer. We'll communicate with you about those as well and any changes. But like Leonard said earlier, definitely guided by health and safety in that regard.
And I will kind of take the risk and date myself. Gone are the days of trying to sneak past the house mother or the house dad and you know, whatever you're trying to sneak past them. That's not the image of our RDs, even though I think sometimes students think they're there to catch people. They're not. It's really to be on site and answer the questions that students have. I don't know anything, no firsthand experience about sneaking past Mrs. G.
Mute. There's the mute button. All right, great. Thank you. We have a question for Cezar next. When will we know which classes are online versus in person? We need to know this if you want to decide or not.
Robert, I have to ask you to please repeat that because your audio just cut out quite badly. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hopefully can get this working. The question is, when will we know which classes are online versus in person? We need to know this information to decide if we want to defer enrollment.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of a longer answer here because I really want to contextualize the whole deferral process for you all. The easy part of the answer here is that we are hoping to have that decision made by the time the registration for fall opens up for our current student population right around June 12th. So we know there are a lot of families over here looking at this June 1 date and looking at this big piece to know what percentage of these first year classes are going to be face-to-face versus online. So our faculty is working very closely with the Office of the Registrar and others on getting that information baked into the system where students will be able to see what classes will be either face-to-face or online. The timeline is right around June 12th. So shortly after commencement here at Western. So that's what we're anticipating. Now, the longer piece, I really do need to take a second over here about the deferral process. There are a lot of families who will be making very personal decisions on why to defer, why take a gap year. Some of those may have to do with finances. Some of them may have to do with personal health concerns or other types of vulnerabilities. Those are very, very personal decisions. What I want to caution folks against is to look at what would be the other experience, the alternate experience that your student may have at home if they were to stay at home versus potentially coming to join Western or to join your campus or school of choice. I'm speaking this from a very, very personal space because as I pointed out, I have a son who's a senior who's going to be going to a different school and that school is going through the exact same challenges. So we're in that very space of wondering, do you defer and stay here at home instead of moving away and spending all of this money if that other school is going to have a predominantly online experience? Same exact information. I'm sending the same exact email to my colleagues at said institution. And that's where we start to have those very intimate conversations, as it would be with an 18-year-old young man full of bravado, to say, what would the experience in Bellingham look like as opposed to the other city? Would he necessarily get a job here? Probably not, because everybody's out there looking for work. Would he necessarily be hanging out with his high school friends? Unlikely, because they're off to different parts of the country, at the very least exploring different parts of the country. Would necessarily be taking a class at the local community college be the best option? Maybe, but then that could potentially forego some of the scholarships that he was awarded at the other school. And there's no guarantee that those credits at the community college are going to necessarily transfer one-to-one to the other institution. So I bring all of that to say is that really look at what the alternate experience may be for you and your student should they choose to stay at home. Because I can tell you this right now, that it's unlikely that my son's going to be backpacking in Barcelona this summer, because there ain't nobody traveling in Barcelona right now. So for him to be hanging out in Bellingham, and as he put it, he said, staying around in Bellingham for another year would stink big time. He actually used another word, but he said it would not be great. But those are the vulnerable and very real conversations that we're having. So kind of a long answer, but I wanted to speak that from both the director perspective as well as the dad who's living this in the flesh every day.
Great, thank you, Cezar. Thank you for sharing your perspective as both director and dad. We have another housing question for Vicki and Leonard. The question is, if I apply for housing my freshman year and come to know that most of my students' classes are going to be online, are we obligated to continue paying for the on-campus housing?
So the great thing about on-campus housing is you're not required. When you apply for housing and then you confirm with us, if you decide that you no longer want to live on campus housing, it's much easier to just let us know that you're not going to be living on campus. And we can make adjustments pretty easily, where if you do move off campus and sign a lease, that can definitely be a little bit harder to get out of or to change your mind on. There are certain, I'm going to ask Brent to put this in the chat, but there are certain deadlines that you want to meet. So certain days of the month, so the June 30th is one of the first ones coming up. So if you cancel, the first deadline is a $100 fee to cancel your contract with us, and then it increases over time over summer, the closer that we get to that first day of classes. But you can change your mind and be released from your contract. Another piece I want to add just really quickly is if anything changes, so like say spring quarter, we weren't expecting this, but in March, all classes went online, and a lot of students did go home during that time because it was right during the start of COVID-19, and we were able to release everyone from their contract at that point too, and not pay for spring quarter as housing. So that's just an advantage if you choose to live on campus versus off-campus apartment where you're signing a year-long lease usually.
Great, thank you for your answer, Vicki. We have another question for Cezar. Cezar, what is Western doing to keep people of color safe on campus right now?
Oh, wow. I wish that we had more than just a few minutes to invite as many voices as possible to contribute to this. Yeah, I need to take a breath here, and I will absolutely be inviting some of my other colleagues to chime in on this, particularly with the backdrop of what's been going on around the world and around the country, whether it is targeting of our Asian American populations because of, or nationalities because of the origin of COVID, to what we're seeing with regards to police violence against African Americans. There's just too much. So ultimately, education and leaning into really difficult and vulnerable conversations is what the university is one of the ways in which universities tackle this. And Western is certainly there, starting at the very top. Sabah Randawa sent an email, our president of the university sent an email to the entire Western community talking about how this has no place in the world of 2020. And as we choose to extend love and compassion towards aggressors, we also do expect justice to take place in addressing the wrongs that some of these individuals do purportedly enact upon their community. So education is what it's about. So young people of color who are going to be entering our community, are going to be challenged in the day-to-day. They're probably challenged already from a very young age in our communities of color. So in many respects, this is nothing new, sadly. But as they are now entering this adult phase where they might not have the immediacy of their communities there to support them, whether it's their family, whether it's their church, whether it's their other extended communities of color in their, whether it's in Seattle or Chicago or Philadelphia or Dallas or Miami, they're going to be now going to a place like Western, like another city where they perhaps don't have that extended community. So Western does make concerted efforts to educate and inform students about the resources available to them, whether it is extended communities of color, whether faculty and staff of color counsel, whether it's student groups and organizations that are available to them to connect and start to build that network. But the network is not ultimately, that community is not ultimately about excluding others who are not like them. Ultimately is also a space where we could have those difficult conversations with others who are not like us and inform them about why is it that when we have an encounter with somebody who wears a uniform in blue, why is it that we're a bit more guarded, right, than others who perhaps don't have that same background? So those are just some of the things that our community does over here. And I'm very proud to say that we keep making strides in those spaces. And I absolutely invite some of my other colleagues to speak of their own experiences and what some of the ways that Western is helping our communities of color here on campus. Please.
Well, Cezar, I appreciate the question because from a parent perspective, when things are normal, it's tough sending your kid away when things are normal. And now to do that in light of a pandemic and the recent outrage that we've all have noticed on TV, it's too much. And one of the things that Western, I believe, does well is to make ourselves vulnerable, put ourselves in situations of having hard, tough conversations, and more importantly, helping this next generation see that it's not easy. It's not easy, it's not guaranteed, and moms and dads, when you have a sense that you've protected them for 18 years, you've protected them and they know how to play you. So you got that relationship. And now all of what you've tried to teach them about respect and trust and, you know, just do the right thing. And sometimes all of that doesn't matter. So there's a tremendous amount that I would say is going on with families as well as with the individual students. But the more important thing is, how do we help educate our students? These are the leaders for the next generation. And I apologize for the baby boomers. We've messed this up. We have not made it better for the people behind us, made it more difficult. But how do we help them find their voice, their resiliency in all of this? It is possible. It can be done. And there are those, Cezar and myself and Dr. Ledbetter and Keith Williams and others that I can think of that are on the campus, that sometimes our students are going to need to hear the truth. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be hurtful for them because they've never experienced that before. But the way through this is around people that care and showing students the positive pieces of what they can do. But as we all know, sometimes the world is unfair, and that's a surprise to some. And we just have to be resilient and hang in there.
Yeah, great. Thank you all so much for your insight on these big and challenging and important questions. I do have one more question that I'm gonna throw out to the whole group and have each of you answer, so we can just popcorn around as soon as people have an answer and are ready to answer it. Our last question says, it sounds a little lonely to be in your own room and on your laptop for classes. Can everyone recommend one good way for freshmen to feel connected and make friends? Once again, that is to the whole group. So whoever's ready to answer that, you all get a turn, but feel free to jump in. How do you feel connected? How do you make friends?
I can start. My suggestion is to utilize those first few days. They're crucial. Nobody else knows anyone either, which is really great because you're not alone in that, or they don't know a lot of people. So use that first day, move-in day, that week, that your first week in classes, to introduce yourself, get to know people that way, introduce yourself to people on your floor. If you're not living on campus, within the classroom environment, online or in person, and just remember that everybody else is going through that same thing. So utilize that time well, and you'll find people to connect with in that first initial time here.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and say one of the best ways to get to know people is join a club and organization. Just get connected as quickly as you can, and you'll find some like-minded people to have some fun with.
Ditto. Thanks, Sislena, the plug. Yeah, definitely. Clubs are going to be there. They're going to be there for all of our students, and they're a great way to connect. Also, being in these spaces where there's still going to be outdoor space. There's still going to be facilities that are physically distant appropriately, and you'll be able to have hangout space. You'll be able to be out of the house. You'll be able to be with other people. You'll be with your peers. You'll be responding to the world events. You'll be able to be active participants, citizens, engaged, doing meaningful work outside of the classroom and inside the classroom. So I know that students will make that happen. And also we're in the midst, in the co-curricular realm, we're in the midst of planning things that will facilitate in this environment, sort of groupings and small pods. We're maybe going to come up with all kinds of fun, interactive, like, you know, define your pod, come up with a name, come up with a design for your group, and then go out and take on these challenges, real world physical challenges, online challenges, you know, Amazing Race style, all kinds of fun events. We're adapting things that are going to, in some ways, be even more fun than they were. If we can get the drive-in idea for fall, and yeah, then we could be watching movies. It's gonna, there's still going to be a lot of great things going on.
Robert, I would urge students, and this is a lesson that I saw when I worked at a previous institution. It happened to be a Catholic Jesuit institution, but I love how my good friend Father Duty and that staff did the work there. They asked new students to kind of get connected with something larger than themselves. It can be a club, but some kind of service, some kind of interest, you know, reaching back, you know, big brother to the YMCA, or, you know, something outside that connects them to something bigger than them and me and that sort of thing. Vicki and others are absolutely right. They're at this age, sometimes they're really focused on the sun revolves around, you know, right here. But sometimes when you kind of connect to something bigger, especially in these times, you know, that's respectful and those kinds of things, it gives them, they see their privilege, they see their power in being able to shape the events versus being shaped by the events.
Robert, this is Ronna, and I would say one of the elements about where we are now is we're having really interesting conversations about how do you redefine what it means to connect and how we connect. And we've all had to do that very quickly and in unique circumstances. And I think that element of what it means to connect means something different to every person. And when I talk particularly to my student staff, one of the elements that they have long said for years is one of the pieces of advice that our student staff, our orientation student advisors will say to new students over and over again is, now is the time to think about how you want to connect and to begin practicing some bravery and courage in being willing to step into new circumstances and being willing to, in this kind of a case, sign up to be in a group hangout and just chat and be willing to do an Ask an OSA a question and talk about campus life, or be willing to call the counseling center and get connected to a group for support. So being able to strengthen that muscle and realize where now is a great time to start talking with students about how they might think about what they want to connect to, but it's also the how they want to connect that will feel more fulfilling to them. And that can come in different ways, but it's beginning to strengthen that muscle to feel brave enough to do it.
That's great, Ronna. Yeah, everything that's been said I agree with everything. I think as soon as the question was posed, I thought, one of the things that I know that many Western alum appreciate, and I hear over and over again, is the connection and community that was built as a student. I'm connected with folks in my cohorts from undergrad and graduate school still. Casey, Greg, right? Lots of ways that we're staying connected. And I think that I am confident that students who graduate from Western who've experienced this are still going to continue to say that they appreciate Western for that ability to be connected, to build community. It may look and feel a little bit different, especially right now, but I think that's one of the things that it's exciting to hear some of the things that are being planned for the fall. And if I were to channel my student staff right now, we hire a number of student advisors to work with you all as you're joining the Western community from an advising perspective. They would encourage you to step outside your comfort zone, to do something that you maybe wouldn't normally think of, or if something sounds interesting, but you may be apprehensive, that might be a good clue to just try it out. And then I think the menu of opportunities that will be provided to you will be probably overwhelming, honestly, of what you have an opportunity to do. So encourage you to stick your neck out there and build that community and engage.
That's great. And I do want to jump in here real quick because we do have one last question for Cezar. And Cezar, I will also let you answer about what students can do to stay happy and stay connected and stay part of a community. But there is one clarifying question that I wanted to get to. Just to be clear, is it correct that families won't know about the online or offline status of classes, of certain classes, until they know, until after they need to sign up for housing? What's the timeline there? And I can repeat the question if I did not explain myself very clearly.
No, well, the priority date for housing is also June 1, but Leonard, you can chime in over here that housing is going to continue to accept applications well into June. So Leonard, let me start with the other side of the question here, which is online and face-to-face, the determination of those classes, those breakdowns of which are going to be online, which are going to be face-to-face, that's going to be done a little bit closer to mid-June. And I know that is a big component for a lot of families, but housing will continue to accept applications here well after June 1. I see Leonard nodding in agreement. Is that right, Leonard?
Absolutely. You see this bald head in Bellingham nodding in the affirmative, my friend.
Did that answer the question, Robert? I feel like I might have missed a piece there.
No, I think that's, yeah, I think you answered that clearly. And Leonard, thank you for your affirmation as well. Last call for how students can stay connected and feel part of a community during these different circumstances than they were planning for their first term of college.
I'm not going to really add on anything other than my colleagues have already covered so wonderfully and much more eloquently than I could. I just want to say the following, particularly for the family members, they are here, today thinking about what is the best choice for their student. Be informed, talk to each other, have the vulnerable conversations, but know that whether especially if you're coming to Western, if you elect to go to another school, know that colleagues like you see around this call here today, these are dedicated professionals who are waking up every day and looking and tackling these incredibly difficult decisions and wanting to extend the most engaging, productive, and genuine experience possible. Doing this in this environment that is full of uncertainty, is overlaid with so much anxiety, but we, like colleagues at the University of Washington, Washington State, Central, Eastern, Evergreen, all of the other institutes of higher education across the country, the blogs, the professional industry newspapers, everybody tackling these same exact issues, looking to provide a safe and engaging and meaningful experience to every student who walks on our campuses and sits down in our classroom for that kind of an experience. That, I assure you, there's no question in my mind.
Great, thank you so much, Cezar. And two very quick details before we wrap things up. One is that I said at some point in the past hour and a half or so, I mentioned the first day of fall term being September 25th. It's actually September 23rd. I was quoting a incorrect or previous year's date. The second and last piece of housekeeping that I want to get to is my suggestion for students staying connected and feeling part of a community. I'm going to answer this one. We've had lots of great answers. In my mind, the best way to stay connected and feel part of the community is to make a study group. Please feel free to share with your students that absolutely every single 100% of college students want to be in a study group. 0% of college students want to take the initiative and social risk of forming a study group. So if you go out and form a virtual Zoom study group with your new classmates, you will be well liked, people will think that you are brave, and you will have a better time academically as well as making friends. So lots of great answers to that question, and that is mine. We are at the end of our time for today. I want to give a very big and very genuine thank you to everyone who's joined us on the air. Casey, Ronna, Meagan, Leonard, Vicki, Cezar, and Sislena, as well as Jacob, Julia, Joe, Freddie, and Brent behind the scenes in the chat answering questions. And a huge thank you as well to Ali, who is behind the scenes making this whole thing happen and may have appeared on camera when I disappeared. And last but certainly not least, a huge thank you to all of the parents and families and everyone else who has joined us today. I do really appreciate you all being here on a Friday afternoon. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for all that you do to support your students and help them be successful as they go off to college this fall. If you do have any more questions or anything else that comes up throughout this whole process, please be in contact with us. You can reach the admissions office at admissions@wwu.edu. And even though we are not currently on campus, we are still answering the phone. You can reach us at 360-650-3440. Finally, you can find a lot of resources, some of which we've mentioned on our website, admissions.wwu.edu/admitted/virtual for some of this information. And I hope everyone has a nice and safe and fun and enjoyable weekend. And once again, thank you so much for being here.